Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we are going to share demonic encounter horror stories. First story. My dog and I found a demon in the Arizonan desert. The Superstition Mountains, to be exact, which around here are just called the Superstitions. They stick up from the dirt and dust like a dragon's back molar. Thick, otherworldly, sinister. There are stories about this place, legends of lost Dutchmen, and lore of hidden gold. And many people have spent a good deal of time out here digging and climbing and spelunking, trying to find it, claim it. Me being one of them. Now, I've been up to Superstitions a couple times before, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends, but the day I discovered the demon, I was with my dog, Charles. We were like all those who came before us, looking for the lost Dutchman's gold mine, a place said to hold all the riches you could ever want. And though I thought it was just a silly tale, a reason to get my ass off the couch and out hiking, in a way, and secretly I wanted it. And I wanted it bad. That day, Charles and I were out there from dusk till dawn, surveying the land, hiking around the peaks and the crags, feasting on ill-made sandwiches and the scraps, looking for something unusual and peculiar and shiny. It was nearing full dark when we found it. A small red blip in the rocks, a door. It was rusted, reddish, corroded, like it was sick and was rotting from the inside out. I walked towards it, puzzled and intrigued. Beside me, Charles panted and watched me with deep trust. There was something about it, and it piqued my curiosity. And for some reason indeterminable by me, I just had to know what was inside. As I got closer to it, I realized there was a large angular key sticking out from the exact middle of it, almost like someone had opened it and, in their excitement, left it there. I reached out tentatively, not knowing what would happen. The door was hot to the touch, almost scalding. I bumped it with the tips of my fingers, and it swung open, slightly revealing an impenetrable darkness beyond and the faint smell of lilac. I looked back at Charles, who was standing behind me, watching me. He met my gaze and wagged his tail. "Come on," I said, deciding then and there that this had to be it. This had to be where all that gold was hidden. And I found it. We found it. Charles was going to get a big steak tonight. Using a rock, I bumped the door more open and clambered inside, Charles close on my heels. After a moment's thought, I reached out and grabbed the key. It was surprisingly cold, and I pocketed it. Almost immediately, the door slammed shut like someone had pulled it closed. Someone angry. There was a singular hissing noise, the kind steam might make if let out of a hole too small. And then, just like that, we were enclosed in complete darkness. Charles started growling, low and insistent. Spooked, I flicked my headlamp on and swung it around the space. We were in a small cave of some sort with what looked like a rather large tunnel leading down into the darkness. There were rows and rows of stalagmites and stalactites sticking out from the cave around us. It looked like bared teeth. From around one of the large stalagmites, or stalactite, I can never tell the difference, a human leg popped in and out of view. It looked small, maybe a woman's or teen's leg, and it was wearing a bright yellow high top covered in blue flowers. Peonies maybe. "Hello." The voice sounded different, like none I had ever heard before, like a man and a woman speaking at the same time, but in harmony, high-pitched and excited. So damn excited. "Hello. Hello. I know your name. Yeah, I'm not telling you my real name. Do you want to know how?" My heart pounded its way up and into my mouth, choking me, making it hard to speak. Who are you?" There was a pause, and in that moment, the steady stream of Charles's low growl overtook the space. "Oh, no, dog." The voice paused, then spoke again, its voice dropping in pitch faster than my stomach. "I think you should run now." Not wanting to take my eyes away from the foot, I felt behind me with my hands, try to find the borders of the rusted red door. But I couldn't. Finally, I turned and saw that it was gone. The damn thing had disappeared. A sick laughter boiled up from behind me, pouring over me, drenching me with fear. Beside me, Charles started barking aloud, mad bark. Fully panicked now, I turned and focused on the only opening I could see, that long, dark, perfectly carved tunnel. It went down, down, down into the darkness beyond. Come on, Char. We took off. And as we ran, the laughter never got farther away, but stayed right there behind us, as if it was coming out of the goddamn walls themselves. The tunnel went all the way down into an enormous room with high, angular walls. It was so big I couldn't see where anything ended. Charles and I rounded the corner and my heart stopped. Voices, male and female, echoed up to me from the rear of the room. Then, as I watched, two people appeared out of the darkness before I even had time to react. I stood there, Charles by my side, out in the open until they noticed me. They were talking about something. In retrospect, the guy was saying, I still think I should have apologized about the dog. Shit way to die. Guy is probably still in shock. Yeah, the girl interrupted, but you save his life. And cleaned up. And that's what matters, not the, who are you? They both stopped short, seeing me standing in the middle of the tunnel. And it's what they were wearing that made me hesitate more than anything else. The guy was decked out in, and I mean this in the most literal way possible, full tactical gear, complete with some sort of night vision goggles / gas mask combination. He was also, inexplicably, holding a broken guitar. The girl, who looked to be in her 20s, maybe older or younger, was wearing a ratty, muddy Burzum shirt, ripped shorts, and green flip-flops. I looked between them, not knowing what to say. Instead, Charles took a tentative step forward and made the first comment, a small woofing sound, curious and yet surprisingly blunt. He was looking directly at the girl. What you on about? She looked directly back at Charles. The guy and I looked between them for a moment. Me confused, he amused. And then the guy looked up at me and said, no, seriously, how the hell did you get in here? How are you alive? His voice was slightly muffled by the mask. I gaped at them before finding my voice and telling them, honestly, there was a door and a key, a weird cold, black one. I have it here. I slid it from my pocket and showed them briefly. The guy in the gas mask didn't respond, but instead looked down at the girl who looked back up and shot him a guilty grin. He shook his head and looked back at me. And you're okay? Yeah, I said. But alive? What did you mean by that? The girl, who had turned her attention back to Charles, laughed and said, what? Did you not see that large reptilian on your way down? Have you not heard the legends, what they say about this place? Reptilian? The guy looked over at the girl, then back at me and pushed his goggles / mask up on his head so I could see his eyes, his face. She means demon. A demon? I laughed. What? Isn't this just the lost Dutchman's mine? You guys are just searching for the treasure and decided to play a spooky little trick on me, right? It was the guy's turn to laugh, and he did, heartily. Oh man, are you in for one hell of a shock? Turn around, but do it slowly, like your life depended on it. A freakish, low laughter shook the walls of the cave, and I turned around, slowly, just like the guy told me to do. At first, I didn't see anything, but as my eyes adjusted to the light, I saw it. There, just by the shadows of an oddly shaped boulder, a foot. The same foot, wearing that same yellow shoe. Except the peonies were red now. Bright red. It did a little jig. I turned back to look at the man, my eyes wide in shock and disbelief. He just looked back at me with an I know, right? expression, then cleared his throat and said, "What are you most afraid of, bud?" "What? That's a weird thing to ask someone." "Fair," he replied, "but just tell me, so we're ready." He gestured to the girl and himself. The girl, though, she just shook her head and muttered, "You know, just him. What am I most scared of?" "Yep. I don't know, crushing debt." It's got a small, quick burst of laughter from the guy. No, he said, still smiling. "Like your nightmares." "What are they made of?" The girl scoffed and rolled her eyes at the guy beside her. "That's a stupid way of asking that question, bud." Then she looked at me. "Ever read IT? By Stephen the King of Horror?" "Try, but that book is long." "Yeah, but imagine that." "What? What?" The guy cleared his throat, obviously wanting to help. "Wasn't there the same thing in that book with that wizard boy Messiah?" It was the girl's turn to laugh. Harry Potter. And yeah, the Boggart. But what do you think she got the idea from, huh? The guy shrugged, looked at her straight-faced, then said with sarcasm, "Oh, I dunno. Maybe they both got it from all that demonology and lore and mythology shit we just spent hours reading. Because, it's a basic human archetype of fear itself." The girl made an angry, sort of growling noise at the guy, then turned back to me and said, "It's a goddamn thing that changes into whatever you fear most. Aliens, reptilians, deadites, Nazis, giant bugs, werewolves, that kind of shit. I guess you could call it a demon. Werewolves, eh." The guy smirked at the girl who rolled her eyes. "Hey," she said to him, "shut up." While they were talking, and I was watching them, totally bemused, none of us had noticed Charles creepy ever so tentatively towards the foot. He must have been hypnotized or something, because that dog never leaves my side. A small yelping sound burst out behind us, and we all turned at the same moment to see a hideous creature crouched on all fours with Charles pinned beneath it. And yeah, okay, if I had to pick a thing, I would say that thing, that slimy and scaly dead thing, with rotten skin and yellowed pointed teeth, and that weird ass-jerking stop-motion movement, wearing the same outfit my ex wore when I saw her last. That thing was the thing I was scared of most. "No," the guy bellowed, dropping the broken guitar and pulling out the biggest handgun I have ever seen. "Not another goddamn dog. You better cover your ears," the girl said. "And eyes," she added as an afterthought. And the guy, without so much as 2 seconds of time to aim, blasted that gun right at that thing. The flash from the tip of the barrel was blindingly bright, too bright. And the subsequent boom was heart and head shatteringly loud. The bullet hit the thing in the shoulder and blew off a large portion of it, splattering the wall behind it black with goo. It screamed and transformed. I thought it might turn into the reptilian the girl had mentioned, but it didn't. Instead, it turned into another man, a normal-looking guy. He wore a white shirt, blue jeans, and cowboy boots. And despite the wound on his shoulder, he stooped and picked up Charles, holding him high, blocking his face with his body. Charles growled and snapped and whimpered. Next to me, the girl made a shocked face and looked between the man in the cowboy boots and the guy with the gun. Well, shit, the guy was still aiming at the thing, but was hesitant to fire, clearly not wanting to hit Charles. He was also very clearly ignoring the girl's reaction, too. She looked back from the guy to the man in the cowboy boots and seemed to decide something. She opened her mouth and started to sing. I had visions. I was in them / I was looking into the mirror / to see a little bit clearer / rottenness and evil in me. A look of sheer disbelief crossed the guy's face, and he chanced to glance back at the girl. "Really? Of all songs? That's the one. That's the one you choose." She just smiled and kept singing. The guy looked over at me, grinning, and lowered his gun, but only slightly. "See," he said over the voice of the singing girl, glancing between me and that monster. "Music. Any kind of music controls it. You don't necessarily have to play an instrument or even be that good." The girl shot him a glare, still singing, but as long as there's some beat to it, he gestured at the demon with his head. I looked over at it and laughed. I couldn't help it. The creature, it was just swaying and swaying to her singing, no matter how off-key and warbling it was. It had transformed again from the man to a large, reptilian. 7 feet tall, with shiny blue-green scales and yellow diamond-shaped eyes. It twirled suddenly, dropping Charles in the process. He yelped and scrambled over to me, limping. There was a large gash on his left flank, and it was gushing blood. "Here," the guy said, kneeling down and placing his gun on the ground. "I can stop the bleeding. Hold him." He pulled some sort of liquid bandage out of his vest and swiftly, but precisely stemmed the flow of blood from Charles's leg. I thanked him, then looked back up at the girl, and that thing, slightly afraid but more amused. She was still singing, but she was doing something else now. Dancing, right up next to the reptilian, who was now wearing a cowboy hat and a ridiculously campy grin. "Dancing with your demons? Eh?" She nodded, still singing. I looked over to the guy. "Kind of poetic, huh?" Kinda, he said, patting Charles on the head and standing up. Now stay put. We're gonna go put this asshole back where it belongs. They left, the singing girl leading the way, the dancing reptilian following, and the guy, gas mask / goggles back on, bringing up the rear with his gun trained on it. They returned about 15 minutes later and escorted me back to the cave I had entered from. The door was still gone, and we stood there for nearly a full minute before the guy reached forward towards me and said, "Key." Whoa. I reached into my pocket, pulled the key out, and handed it to him. He flipped his goggles down and surveyed the walls around us for a moment. Suddenly, he strode forward and stuck the key straight into the bedrock and turned it. There was a resounding click, and slowly, the rusted red door reappeared, like it had been there the whole time, and some trick of the light or the way it was built into the rock prevented me from seeing it. But the door, I said in complete disbelief, it disappeared. Yeah, the guy said. It tends to do that when it's locked. But this bad boy here, he wiggled the key at me. It tends to, light it up. He tapped his goggles, then turned and swung the door open to a sweet, sweet rush of fresh air. And just like that, we were out. Between us, the guy and I got Charles down the mountain, while the girl trailed behind, humming snatches of that song every so often. We stopped near one of the trailheads, where 3 cars were parked. The moon was high in the sky, and there was a slight, cool breeze blowing in from the west. Above us, the stars twinkled mischievously, like they knew deep, dark secrets they were just bursting to spill. I was still carrying Charles, who was whimpering slightly, and the guy glanced sideways at him with a look of what can only be described as concern on his face. He turned to me, digging for something in one of the front pockets of his black vest. "Here," he said finally, pulling out a wad of paper. "Get him looked at," he nodded at Charles. "Let me pay for it." He handed the wad of paper to me, and I looked down at it, seeing immediately that it was at least 2 dozen $50 bills. I looked back up at him and said, "Really? It's just money. Get yourself something too. Try to forget about that." He gestured to the rusted metal door with his head. The girl looked over at him imploringly. "Oh, can I have some money too?" He laughed in the girl's face and said, "Shut up." Then looked back at me. "Forget about this place, okay? Don't tell anyone about it. Or about us. They might come out here looking for answers. It's not safe. And we wouldn't want anyone getting all the way, down there." He paused, thoughtful, then added, "I mean it." Then, to the girl, he said, "Come on." And they turned towards the black car. I watched them for a few seconds before yelling, "Wait, what exactly is down there?" The girl huffed and climbed into the passenger seat. But the guy, well, he turned back, grinned widely, and said something with a small wink. And it was the way he said it, all of it playfully enticing, like what he really wanted was for people to go out and explore and find out the truth for themselves. It was how he said it that made me decide to write this all down and share it with you all. I think it's what he really wanted. What did he say? He said, "Why the gateway to hell itself?" Second story, the demon in the basement. I am a female, and I was 23 at the time of this story. These events took place in 2010, and I finally thought it was time to share the story of the horrifying events I went through with the demon in the basement. At the time, I had been on the lookout for a new place to live as my roommate had a cat, and I could no longer deal with my allergies. When I moved in with her, I was living in a dingy motel room, so having a roommate in a proper house was a serious upgrade. I thought the cat wouldn't be too much of an issue, but it was not to be. Being an animal lover, I could never even think about suggesting to someone to get rid of a beloved pet, so I opted to move out instead. I had been searching for a new place for a couple of weeks when I came across an ad on Craigslist describing a room for rent on a waterfront property. It was surprisingly affordable, and I was very intrigued. There are no photos on the ad, but the address was pretty close by. So I took a drive over to the place to take a look, and the property was beautiful. It definitely looked lived in and well maintained. So I called the number on the ad later that afternoon to make an inquiry. This is when I first came across Crazy Patty. At first, she seemed extremely friendly on the phone. We laughed and joked and got along very well. She said she would be delighted to meet me and to come around anytime to view the property and the room for rent. So I made an appointment for the next day. I pulled up in the driveway and was greeted by Patty waving warmly at me from the front porch. She was a middle-aged woman in her 40s. She had a kind of hippie-ish clothing style. She wore thick glasses and had long, frizzy brown hair. She was shorter than me by a couple of inches, and she spoke in a kind of nasally baby voice. Now, before I continue, I would like to give a little background on the women of my family. We are all gifted in the spiritual realm. The gift can be traced back to my great-great-grandmother, who could read tea leaves. She was extremely gifted and did readings for her entire life, until one day when she finished her tea and read her son's death. Needless to say, she never read tea leaves again. Since then, the women on my mother's side have inherited some kind of special gift, whether it is clairvoyance, clairsentience, or something of that nature. Funnily enough, no one since my great-great-grandmother has had the ability to read tea leaves. I was lucky or unlucky enough to be a clairvoyant, meaning I can see, hear, and even smell things from the spirit world. These things happen very rarely to me, and at this point I just consider my abilities a bit of an annoying quirk and had not yet accepted them as part of who I am. Even though I was aware of my gifts in the spirit world, I was still a very skeptical person, and I always tried, and even wanted, to find rational explanations for things before I came to any conclusions about any kind of spiritual activity. Before these events, I had never experienced any kind of malevolent or demonic being. Since my phone conversation with Patty had gone so well, I was expecting us to get along just as well in real life. As I walked up the stairs of the porch to shake her hand, I immediately noticed her eyes. I can't fully explain how they looked, only that they were off. She said how nice it was to meet me and shook my hand. I immediately got icy chills down my spine. I managed to smile and said that it was great to meet her too. She took me inside and, to be fair, the house was beautiful. It had a massive living room with huge skylights, and there were lush plants everywhere. The kitchen was ultra-modern and sparkling clean. There was also a huge two-story deck out back fully kitted out with furniture, a bar, and a fire pit. The deck opened out to a private beach on a lake. I immediately fell in love with the house. Patty took me downstairs to the finished basement where the room for rent was. The basement consisted of 4 rooms, a large living room with a pool table, a bathroom, a smaller living room, and a bedroom. The rooms for rent were the bedroom and the smaller living room. Apart from being a little dark and without a huge amount of light, the rooms for rent were lovely. They were clean and fully furnished. Patty was extremely nice to me, and she seemed very excited to show me around. But something still seemed off about her. Despite the uneasiness I felt, I decided that I loved the house, and the next day, we went through all the relevant paperwork. I paid my deposit, and before you know it, I was all moved in. At the time, I had no family where I was living. One side of my family were in Europe, where I had just moved from at the beginning of the summer, or all the way down on the southern part of the U.S. So, I was feeling a little lonely, but I was optimistic. Patty worked during the day, and I worked at night at a bar, so we rarely saw each other. At first, this arrangement was perfect, and I was settling in nicely. I had no issues until one night, about a week in, I decided to cook myself dinner. I had a night off, my first since moving in with Patty, and I was dying to use the gorgeous kitchen. Growing up, I was always taught to clean as I go, so I did just that. I heard Patty's key in the front door and greeted her as she walked into the kitchen. My smile faltered as I saw the expression on her face. She looked enraged, and she yelled at me. "What the hell are you doing?" Her brow was furrowed, and her lips were pulled back in a snarl. I was completely shocked, and my body froze for a moment before I answered shakily that I was just cooking dinner. I tried to appease her by offering her some, but she swelled like an angry toad and screamed that I had destroyed her kitchen. Now, my dinner was fairly simple, and I had been cleaning as I went along. The only thing that was dirty was one pan, which was already soaking in soapy water. I explained that I obviously had every intention of cleaning it up, but she screeched again, stomped down the hall, and slammed her bedroom door. I quickly cleaned up everything and made sure the place was spotless before taking my plate down to my bedroom and eating down there so I didn't run into her again. After that, things just got worse. Patty was no longer friendly to me and looked at me like I was just a gross insect that she longed to squash. I tried desperately to look for somewhere else to live, but I lived in a tourist area, and it was a seasonal town. It was coming into winter, and many businesses had shut down and residents moved out of state. I could find nowhere else to rent that I could afford. I even contacted my old roommate, but because of a sudden family issue, she moved back in with her parents. I kept looking for weeks, but found nothing. As the weeks went by, it became apparent that Patty didn't want me there. She wanted no trace of her roommate in her house. She wanted to collect the money, and that was it. I tried to stay out of her way by doing my household chores and emerging from the basement when she was out of the house. On my nights off, I went into work to eat dinner, so I didn't have to use the kitchen. I made sure to only buy microwave dinners for the nights. I couldn't afford to eat out. Every time I had to come upstairs and Patty was there, I would be met with her intense glare with those eyes that continued to be off somehow. At this point in time, my living situation had started to affect me physically. I was constantly exhausted. My skin was paler, and I became very skittish. It was after this change in me started to take hold that things in the basement started happening. Things would go missing and then turn up. At first, I just put this down to forgetfulness, which I am prone to. But one day something happened that made me incredibly uneasy. See, I always kept my work shoes in a specific spot when I came downstairs. I had been called in for a day's shift last minute, and I was getting my uniform on. On my way out, I went to grab my shoes, but they weren't there. Now, this was something I was not forgetful about. I always kept my shoes in this specific spot because Patty didn't want me dirtying up the carpet. I went upstairs to check and see if I left them up there, and I hadn't. I looked everywhere for them, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Not putting it past Patty to do something mean like take my shoes, I went back downstairs to grab a different pair, only stopped dead in my tracks. Right there in their normal spot were my shoes. My heart leaped out of my chest. What was going on? I knew I was forgetful at times, but they definitely weren't there a minute ago, were they? There had to be an explanation. Patty was at work, so I knew it wasn't her, and it was at that moment that a thought crept in my mind, was there someone else in the house? Terrified, I grabbed my shoes and ran upstairs. I grabbed my keys and immediately left the house, locking the door behind me. I wondered if I should call the police, but what would I tell them? That I found my work shoes right where I left them? I thought about telling Patty, but the thought of telling her that something had bothered me like that would only give her ammunition to torment me further. So, I didn't tell anyone. After work, I came home to Patty eating her dinner in a mess in the kitchen. Luckily, I had the foresight to grab some food to go from the bar, so I crept in as quietly as possible and just went downstairs to eat, as I always did. I turned on the light in my room, and for a split second, I thought I had seen a dark figure in the far corner of the room. I did a double take, my heart pounding. I had to be going nuts. The stress of this place was starting to make me hallucinate. Satisfied, but still a little uneasy with my explanation, I turned on my TV and began to eat my dinner. As I ate, I was still convinced I saw flutters of movement coming from that corner of the room, just out of my sight. But every time I looked, nothing. This mysterious figure would start making regular appearances out of the corner of my eye. But again, when I tried looking, there would be nothing there. I thought I was losing my mind, and I became even more withdrawn. It was after a few months of this happening that the dream started. I would be having a perfectly normal dream, then all of a sudden, I would have the feeling of being strangled by a faceless man. I would be fighting him off, and I would always wake myself up by screaming. I would wake up sweating, and my heart would be pounding. The worst part was my throat would be sore, and I never knew if I had really been screaming or not. I would like to think that if I was, Patty would run down, but that was unlikely. I would start out having these dreams about once or twice a month, Then as it came closer into the fall of the following year, they started happening more regularly. Once a week, twice a week, every other day. I was feeling completely broken down mentally, emotionally, and physically. I was a shell of my former self. At this point, you are probably wondering why I stayed at Crazy Patty's house for as long as I did. Well, for those of you who have never experienced emotional and mental abuse, consider yourself lucky. It is extremely powerful. Patty used a variety of techniques, including manipulation, intimidation, and gaslighting, to ensure I stayed where I was. She hated me there, but she wanted the money. She literally had me convinced that I wouldn't find anywhere else as nice as her place for the price I was paying, and that no one would put up with me anyway. Up until this point, I had not considered my unsettling experiences at Patty's house to be demonic. I had put them down to a side effect of me being so stressed and beaten down. Until one night. As usual, I had eaten my dinner out of a to-go box in my bedroom. I was sitting on my bed with my laptop in my lap. I had been watching some funny videos online when all of a sudden, I couldn't take a breath. I felt like my chest was being constricted by an invisible vice grip. I went to move my hands up to my throat to check for a swelling or something, but I couldn't move my arms. I was completely paralyzed. It was then that I finally saw the figure in the corner. Its face was covered with a hood, but it lifted its head just enough for me to catch a glimpse of its face. Its eyes were huge and bulbous, much like the milky, pupilless eyes of an anglerfish. It had no other features except for those eyes and that smile. That toothy smile, full of uneven and rotten teeth, a smile that extended beyond the boundaries of its face. Think of Fred from that seriously creepy episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. My heart stopped, and as soon as I saw this figure full on, it disappeared. I finally understood what was happening. I was being attacked. Somehow, I fought the pressure and it subsided. This ordeal couldn't have lasted for longer than 10 seconds or so, but it felt like much longer. I was finally able to draw a breath, and I lay on my bed panting as if I had just been drowning. I immediately jumped up and dug into my junk drawer. I found a few white candles, some sage, and a few crystals. I lit the white candles for protection. I lit the sage to purify the room, and I kept my crystals in my hand. Needless to say, I did not sleep much that night. After this incident, I continued to keep sage lighting at all times when I was in the room awake, and things settled down for a while. It wasn't until Halloween night that the crescendo of my experience peaked. Cliché, I know, but think about it. It was, and still is, believed that the veil to the spirit world is at its thinnest on All Hallows Eve, making it easier for spirits to enter our world. I had been working that night and had gotten home around 1 a.m. Exhausted, I fell right asleep only to get that strangling sensation some hours later. But this time it felt different. This time, it felt more real. In my dream, the entity that was attacking me had grabbed me by the throat. In the past, I had not seen its face while it was doing this. I finally got a full-on view of its face. I could see the cracks on its rotten teeth. I could see the pale blood vessels in its grotesque eyes, and I could smell its rotten breath. I felt a scream coming, but I couldn't get it out. In my dream, I fought and fought, desperately trying to escape its grasp. It picked me up by my throat and slammed me into the wall behind me. I kept fighting it with all my might until I finally woke up. I was sweating and panting, and tears were streaming down my face. I looked at the clock. It was only 3 a.m. But as soon as I looked at the clock, my blood froze in my veins. Not because it was 3 a.m., the traditional witching hour, but it was then I realized that I was not laying in my bed. I was sitting up against the wall. I leaped out of bed and ran into the bathroom, afraid I was going to be sick. Luckily, my stomach held, and I ended up splashing some cold water on my face. It was only when I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror that I had to stifle a scream. My neck was bruised and scratched, like I had been strangled. Without even thinking about how late it was, I called my boss in absolute hysterics. The bar I worked at was attached to a hotel, and I pleaded with him to let me sleep in one of the rooms that night. He did, and I decided right then and there that I would be moving out of Crazy Patty's house. I arrived back the next day to pack up what few belongings I had. After I had everything all packed up, I noticed her bedroom door was open. This was highly unusual, as she always kept it locked when she wasn't there. Thinking maybe her car was in the shop and she was in there, I went over to tell her I was leaving. But she wasn't in there. I went to close the door when something on the floor caught my eye. Normally, it is out of character for me to snoop in someone else's room, but something in my gut just told me to check out what it was that caught my eye. On the floor was a planchette that had been broken in half, with the glass shattered all over the floor. The glint of the glass is what caught my eye. And on the other side of the room was a board, the Ouija board. It finally clicked that it had been Patty that set this entity on me. I stormed out. I was fiddling with my house key, trying to get it off my keychain to leave it on the counter with a note I had left her, when I noticed movement on the deck outside. I looked up and was absolutely horrified to see Patty standing on the other side of the glass door, staring right at me, completely naked. She had her hands on the glass and seemed to be pressing her face right against the glass. It was then that I noticed her eyes. Her eyes had always been off to me, but I finally understood why. Instead of her usual, slightly off eyes, staring right back at me were the milky, bulbous eyes of the entity. I quickly turned around, ran to my car, and tore out of the driveway and never returned. Things got better after that. My anxiety subsided, my face filled out again, and I started to be a lot more social. After a few weeks, I moved into an apartment with 2 girls I worked with and got along very well with. I never saw Crazy Patty again. As of telling this story, almost 12 years have passed, and I am no longer easily beaten down by manipulation tactics. I have become a lot more assertive and will not tolerate any attempt to deceive or manipulate me. I have also been practicing white magic in the form of plants and cooking and have embraced my clairvoyance as part of who I am. I am happy to say that I have never experienced anything like I did at Crazy Patty's house. If I get even a whiff of a negative entity, I get the hell out of Dodge. Stat. All in all, I'm a much healthier, stronger, and happier person than I was all those years ago. But late at night, I still get the horrifying image of Patty staring into my soul with the dead eyes of the demon in the basement. Third story. My girlfriend was born a demon. I never had a chance. I was one of those guys who fell in with a girl a little too soon. No doubt about it. Young. Dumb. No idea what consequences were or the meaning of actions. No matter what mistakes I made, nobody deserved the consequences of dating her. I met Madison in 2nd grade. She had long black hair and was adopted into a rich family. We were in class together after my father retired from Navy. We settled down in a small town so my younger sister and I wouldn't have to move every couple years like the Navy brats. She was the first girl to talk to me when I got there. Fast friends. For years, people laughed at us with the Jack and Madison sitting in a tree jokes. Madison was always hitting people for starting stuff. I had a way of calming her down, and she always appreciated that about me. As we got older in the years, I became more interested in girls, and she began to look more like a woman. She was over the house so much. Being a latchkey kid, my parents just saw her as part of the family. Every time she tried to make friends with a girl, she would do something to ruin it. Then she would run to me crying, and she would be better. My sister even hated her cause she was mean. My mother would be mad at her too, from time to time. My dad thought she was sweet, and that it was cute how possessive she was over me. Until he took me to father/son baseball game when I was 11. When we got home, she had broke our mailbox. She yelled at my father, saying he needed to let her know when I was going to be gone. My father was smooth under pressure and responded very well. He was formerly the executive officer of a destroyer. As a parent looking back, I emulated him. Stern but fair. He talked to her calmly, but realized she wasn't going to cool down until she was near me. Then when she got to me, she was calm and apologized. He tried to talk to her parents, but came to the conclusion that she was just a photograph for their clients to look at on the corporate desk. I overheard him speaking with my mother about a darkness he felt around her. My parents told her that since we're older, She wasn't allowed over for sleepovers anymore. At night, I felt like she was close by, like I wasn't alone. When I would peek down my window blinds, I would see her across the street. She would look back at me, wave, and then started walking toward her house. Fast forward to high school. Everybody assumed we were together. I guess I never denied it. People would talk in the hallways. Poor Jack. She really got a hold on him. Jack and Maddie are cute together. I want a boyfriend that's committed like that. I was trying to make more friends, but the only one who could stand Maddie was my best friend, Tucker. We play video games together and chill. When we hung out, everything felt right. Relaxed. Tuck was on the football team and insisted I join with him. Maddie made a big deal how it would interrupt our time together. Talking to Tuck made me realize even more that my relationship with Maddie wasn't normal. Madison really grew up, though. Beautiful girl. I was called a lucky guy all the time. I really felt controlled, though, and not really that lucky. Other guys trying to talk to her never bothered me, mainly cause she would give them evil looks or tell them to go. The jealousy from her was intense, though. Any girl that even looked my way was a homewrecker, had AIDS, or whatever nasty comment she thought of that day. She got suspended for fighting when Janie Gilbert put her arm around me and told her, "You best treat him better, girl. You don't own this stud." She put Janie in the hospital for 3 months. Janie was paralyzed from the waist down at age 14. There was a huge lawsuit. Since Madison's parents were loaded, they reached a settlement. I never saw Janie again. Shortly after the incident, my parents went out of town. I was looking forward to a weekend by myself. At lunch that Friday, I told Madison that I just wanted some alone time, at least just for Friday night. She became enraged and softly told me if I ever thought of leaving her, she would kill someone. For the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of her. She could sense it, though. She saw my face and realized what she had said to me. As she reached out her hand to me with a sad face, I rejected her incoming apology and left the lunchroom. She got up to follow me, but Tucker and his teammates blocked her. They insisted she give me some time alone. She began making a scene in the cafeteria and started kicking and punching them, but they overpowered her. I turned back to see them holding her. She screamed my name and reached out to me. I thought about turning my back and walking away. I really wanted to believe me, but I walked back to her and asked them to let go of her. She apologized to me while huffing and puffing in desperation. She apologized to Tucker and the team. She told me if I really wanted the alone time tonight, she would respect that. In my head, I thought, maybe this incident changed her. Maybe this madness would stop. I spent the whole afternoon by myself. It was amazing. I was beginning to think maybe I am an introvert at heart. Then the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw no one there. I opened the door. "Is anyone here?" I asked. Then Madison appeared and pushed me into the house. She shut the door behind her. I looked up to see her take off her zipper hoodie as she stared at me. She was dressed super sexy underneath. "I knew you wouldn't walk away from me. I knew you loved me. You earned this today." She screwed my brains out, right on my living room floor. I had no clue what I was doing, and just like that, my virginity was gone. From there on, for the next few weeks, I was hooked on her like a bee to pollen. She would use it to get me to do things. After I started catching on, I told her we should slow down, and I was worried about things like pregnancy. Instead of listening to me, she just went even crazier with it. We did it everywhere. Bathrooms, alleys, you name it, it was christened. Everything changed when we finally got caught at school, when she dragged me to the press box of the football stadium. Her arm turned on the microphone accidentally, and Coach Ferguson's gym class heard her moan from across the field. We knew we were in major trouble as we watched the coach come up the bleachers. Madison was expelled from school. The principal told her that as long as he was alive, he was going to make her life a living hell. Her parents cursed at my parents and I as we left. She screamed at them not to take her away from me. The next day, their house had a for sale sign in the yard with a picture of some daffy-looking realtor. He suspended me from school for 7 days. My parents were a little disappointed in me, but understanding as usual. They advised me not to speak to her anymore. In order to make sure I was using the time wisely, my father took me to work with him every day. His defense contracting agency was great. When I arrived, my father told the operators that worked for his firm what I did. They all laughed, gave me high fives, told me I'm a man now, etc. I had a great 2 days working with the contractors in the cage cleaning equipment they used. One of the operators gave me a combat knife as a gift for cleaning his gear. He said that a direct thrust with it guarantees a kill. That Wednesday in the lunchroom, I was eating with everyone. I looked up at the TV and dropped my sandwich meat on the plate. It was the news. My principal had been brutally stabbed to death in his house. The news said that he had brought home a recently expelled student and tried to force her to commit sexual acts. The next image on TV frightened me. It was Madison, covered in blood with a warm towel wrapped around her. EMTs were tending to her. She was playing the part very well. I knew in my heart what she had done. My father came to get me after he saw the news. We talked in his office about the danger of the situation. He called Mom and decided we had to move away. I went back to work and tried to stay busy. The drive home, my father stopped on the side of the road. He had not said a word to me the whole ride. He turned to me and told me that Madison was pregnant. Her parents called him that afternoon. He asked me what I wanted to do and advised me to be a man about it. My parents were upset with me for days. I couldn't blame them. Once again, I opted to be there for Madison and our future child. Months went by, and I had gotten a job after school to prepare for what was to come. The idea of being a father was scary enough. But the idea of parenting with Madison, so many what-ifs ran through my head all the time. I had to talk to her. I managed to go to her this morning. Her parents' cars were in the driveway, so I had to sneak into the house. I went through a downstairs window and up to her room. I opened the door slowly to see her in her bathroom shower. She was beautiful, and her little tummy was starting to grow. I took my clothes off and surprised her in the shower. She became overloaded with joy, and we made love. We ended up in her bed. It was obvious we would not be attending school that day. I began to wonder if her parents knew I was there. I tried to begin talking about the future, planning things out, money I had saved, etc. Then I got up and went to sneak downstairs to get a bottle of water from the kitchen. As I ventured down the hallway, I saw something I wish I hadn't. A pool of blood was running from her parents' locked bedroom and began running down the stairs. I went back in the bedroom and confronted her. She stood up from the bed, covering herself, and became angry, shouting about how they were never there for her. They got in the way. They were ruining everything. I tried to reason with her, and she became more distressed. She heard nothing I said to her. Nothing she said reassured me. I knew I had made another mistake. She told me she would kill anyone that stood in her way. My parents and family. Our friends. If it came between me and the child, she would kill us both so no one could have us. I could see a rage in her eyes. The darkness my father had seen. It had always been there. There was no future worthwhile to be seen in them. She turned to me and began to tell me that if I did anything to ruin this, she would kill me like she did our principal. She couldn't finish the sentence. I cannot allow it. She stared at me, mouth wide, open in shock. I had finally done something about this relationship that made me feel correct. I stabbed her in the heart. I knew this time, instead of standing by and letting her hurt people, it had to be me that finished this job. I twisted the knife, and she let out a low yell. Her body was shaking. She had not known I had it concealed in my jeans with us. The rage left her eyes, and she kissed me one last time. She knew I had set her free of whatever demon tortured her soul. I pulled the blade from her sternum, and she laid on her back, staring at the ceiling, clenching the bed. Her white sheets quickly turned red. I felt no loss for my unborn child, as it would have been born to this nightmare. I washed up in the shower, got dressed, and wrote this story for the world to see. I called the police. I am currently waiting their arrival. I plan on a peaceful surrender. Whatever punishment the judge gives me, I most certainly deserve it. It will be better than living in her sickness. Fourth story. I kissed a demon. I've seen a lot of shit in my life that I don't really talk about much, as have most of you, I'm sure, but there is one memory that lingers in the back of the mind begging me to stare at it. Sometimes late at night, I stare at the memory. As if I have to stare in the face of the darkness I saw, accept it as a reality, something that is supposed to give some kind of closure, but doesn't. Do you want to hear a story about how a girl's entire perspective on the universe changed in just the span of a few days? The story I can never tell? Then stay with me. But it's kind of a long one. But without sounding arrogant, I feel it's significant. This story took place in a very dark time of my life. My boyfriend at the time had just went to jail. I was all alone in a not-so-friendly city and had almost completely lost sight of who I am. And I worked at a strip club, one of the darkest places you can find yourself in my opinion. Now, to keep the integrity of the story, I will admit that I was using drugs at the time. I will go down and I would go up. Anything to stay numb. But I've been doing so for a long time. This death wasn't my first swan dive into a rabbit hole, but I had no idea the kind of rabbit hole I was diving into this time. To anyone who wants to believe this was just a trip from hell, trust me, I want to believe that. Comfortable to accept. Okay, so to the story. I was at a friend's house. Let's call him Rubio. We were smoking dope and watching movies, which wasn't the norm for me then. Everything was normal. Feeling speedy, but normal. I will add I wrote a poem that was, honestly, one of the best I have ever written and brought tears to his eyes. Then it deleted itself. Then I noticed the painting. It was a painting of my friend, a portrait of a much younger him right after entering military, the kind of painting where the eyes follow you. I was high, so started joking about it. When he left the room, and I will always wonder why I did this, I started being silly and seductively dancing while making eye contact with the painting, and I even went over there and gave a kiss. Even typing this makes me sick. I started to notice eyes move more and more. It intrigued me more naturally. Rubio said stop looking at it in a really stern voice that gives me chills now, to remember now. And I asked why. My breath left my body when he said, because it's a demon. He went on to say it's a common belief in his culture that demons can be trapped in painting. What happened next? Well, it made most horror movies not as scary anymore. I was putting on makeup and mirror, trying so hard not to look at the painting, but it was reflecting straight into mirror. My heart is beating so loud while typing this damn, and things got more strange. I started seeing little grins. His shoulders seemed to shift. Once the frame seemed to shake. But this is the part that made me want to vomit. Hard to explain, but his arm/hand wasn't coming out of the frame, but like perched on top with the black, just evil twisty vines coming out at me. I could see in mirror. Into my back, I could feel the evil. It was like it pinching me. My friend just tried to ignore it as much as possible. It was obvious he was used to that type of shit, which was chilling. I was sitting on the edge of bed and him at his desk when I saw a huge black shadow come over me. I watched his face as he looked up at it, and then tried to shake it off, probably to comfort me. We said nothing. I was kind of trying to follow his lead and ignoring it. But it felt like I already disturbed everything. I saw this crouched figure. It seemed to be wearing some gothic-type lace cloak. It didn't stare long by front door. Minutes later, saw black fog by the door coming at me. I didn't know what to do, so threw a pillow at it. Yeah, just throw a pillow at the demonic force. He came back in after a second and was like, I'm going on call. Was a cabbie. Stay here. My boss lives next door. Even now, I'm like, why did you stay in there? I was literally the stupid person in horror movie. But for some reason I did. Part of me thinks now, when you looked into the darkness, was it just too fascinating not to look away? Sometimes I wish I did look away. The demon on the ceiling was downright the stuff of nightmares. I had noticed his M&M figurines, Xbox controllers, etc. moving, but thought, oh, just another small demonic thing, LOL, why not? Then I looked up. It was a shadow of something. The head, shoulders, and it was huge, like really huge. It had long arms and these tendons coming from them, but they were all connected to the things moving. I guess I would call him a puppet master demon. It is scary when I call it for what it was. It was making the little candy figurines move, the baseball figurines move. It was a trip. At same moment, saw something creep towards me on other side of wall, one of those open floor plan, one bedrooms with wall and middle. I have always thought of it as crouch figure in living room, but the fact that I could see just the tiny bit of its head coming towards me still haunts me. I went in bathroom cause thought, tiny well-lit space, okay. But some mist that I think I remember was actually lighter in color come towards me so left. I just sat on bed and let everything stare at me, I guess. It was weird. My friend rescued me, and I just tried to forget it. At that point, thought it was craziest thing that would ever happen to me. So took comfort in that. But I was wrong. And then why would the paranormal stop there, right? Continues. I go to the club. This wave of sadness crashes over me. I get this intense feeling every time I look at closet near bar/doorway where they keep random stuff. Can't even look at it really. Anyway, I sat there silently in such sorrow and then decided to walk to my private space. It is hard finding silence in a strip club, but there's one place being the small cage stage where there's a washer/dryer, and I went there sometimes. You would just get sick talking to people. All I can say is I felt something, the sadness of a life taken too soon. And I thought to myself, even then, damn, he has trapped her in this terrible place. And this is private space too. Sad face. I would talk to it. Don't judge me, but I would. I would go and talk to it then when I felt it creep towards me run. And then I just walked to it and said, sometimes I wonder what is worse, bleeding out or waking up every day to bleed all over again. This dark mist came over me all at once, like a flood, like he was screaming at the top of his lungs, bleeding out. Live, live. I wish I could live. I felt everything I feel, everything now, as I remember. I started crying. I said, I know you want me to fight. I wish I could fight for you. I still can't move or leave, because I couldn't leave till I had money for hotel. So sat there trying to shake it off. Couldn't. My manager I have known a while called me back. He showed me the video of me looking at something in the dressing room. The moment I was sitting there staring at the things dancing in the air I had never seen before. Like some energy you can touch. Some fingerprint I went my whole life without touching. He wanted me to be honest, WM. And I was a friend, so I was probably because I was high and didn't care and felt a burden to say the word out loud. He believed me. I believed that he believed me. I asked him if that place that is now a closet was part of the walkway where a boy got shot. He said no, but he believes it was the old office where another young man was shot. Nice work environment, I know. And that took my breath away because I had a crippling feeling every time I looked at that little closet. I really did. And part of me thought the kid who died there hid in that little space I hid at for solitude. And I cannot forget the gunshot that changed my entire view of universe. Things get very, very weird. Me and my friend ending up splitting hotel cause he was in same type situation. He come from very spiritual Puerto Rican family. So I felt I could be honest with him and probably learn some things. We continued chatting and hanging out. I start seeing things. He sees them too. Says just ignore them. I see a reflection in candle's light that is unsettling. He puts African prayer beads around the candle. What happens next changed my life forever. I have to finish this later. I feel sick and like I really should type this at daylight for my sanity, but I will continue. I saw demonic things in the candle light on the wall. I saw the tiny lights my very spiritual friend said could be demons or something else. But he just went to sleep like he'd seen this kind of shit his whole life and was also used to living next to realm I couldn't go to sleep in at all. Last thing my friend said before falling asleep was pray. So I did. Was not a religious person at this point, but didn't know what else to do. What followed changed belief system a lot. This is disturbing, but I saw only what I can explain as penis going in and out of vagina from inside view, like I could see the actual muscles. It is terrible and hard to explain in candlelight and continue to see scary shadow type figure on wall. I kept praying. What happens next breaks all levels of insanity. I got the worst cramp in my leg I ever had and saw as the reflections on wall looked like muscles cramping together from inside body. Then I saw a man that looked like our mental picture of Jesus, gesturing me to drink water by getting big pint and lifting it up, back down, up, back down. Made my way to sink and drank some water. Cramps subsided. I still saw God. I didn't hear him, just saw him. So I said, God, raise your arm to right for yes and left for no. I asked if this was sexual demon. Right arm went up. I asked a few more questions about demon, but TBH, my brain has blocked out a bit of this memory. I asked what I should do, and his hands went together, the way I hold my hands when trying to do Reiki. And I'm not an expert. I know someone who has taught me a bit and tried to do it on X who was withdrawing. His breathing did slow. I said it and put up my hands. I tried to harness whatever energy. I kept saying, fight this evil W God's light. Fight this evil with God's light. And I could see glimpses of this mist of white light beside me. But the candle got worse. Trippy, scary worse. Then it slowed. Then the craziest shit of my life happened. It got worse and worse, and I was just overcome with something that made me walk over there, look at the evil in the eyes. The sparkles kept happening, and then I saw a very small, but somehow solid figure in cloak. TBH, I was in habit of talking to God like my buddy at this point, and said, who is that? Hands and reflection went together in prayer. I said, someone I need a prayer for, and instead of right arm going up, I saw an axe in someone's head, like it split it open. Yeah, just starting praying. About 2-3 seconds later, I swear to God on my son, on everything I love, I heard a gunshot. No, up into this moment, I was still ready to believe I was going crazy instead of seeing demons and God and the reality of everything. The thought of me being just crazy high bitch comforted me up next to all this. But I heard the gunshot, and still thinking maybe I'm crazy, I stood by the door and heard the ambulance come through, heard people yelling something in distance. It was really happening. I was really in a trippy horror movie that most people couldn't even handle watching while high LOL life, right? I looked at Candle, said, should I wake my friend up? Are we in danger? And the right hand went up. Just looked at him and took a deep breath, cause I knew no matter how highly he believes in the paranormal, I just can't imagine him believing me. I told him what happened, and of course he did not. But he did open a girl to prove me wrong, and bam, his girlfriend was there. Looked at me, said, you scare the shit of me, and told me to hide in bathroom. I did not sleep with him or even think about it, but my boyfriend had went to jail and abandoned me, and I stupidly shared hotel room WM. Eventually, she came in. I knew he had gun in drawer, but then I heard some scruffle, and why are you getting my gun? Just stayed silent. Eventually, she went downstairs and told me we were going to breakfast. Get out of here quick. So I tried, but she tried to fight me. I insisted that I did not sleep with him. Yadata, that bitch, was not hearing it. I just ran. Can I add that I honestly think gunshot was someone else? And it does make me severely uncomfortable that it feels somehow connected to my life. But I don't think she came in with gun, was just normal level of angry girlfriend. The gun they fought about was in the hotel room's drawer. It makes me wonder if demons walk around in human bodies shooting people. And I try not to think about if some person was caught in spiritual crossfire. Saw a car chase behind me. In fear ran, and some angel person let me in and helped me lose them. So glad trusted that person, I went to work and quit that day. The place made me sick. I was in a locker room, and in the mirror's reflection, looked at what looked stereotypical devil. Just black thing W red horns. Couldn't take it. Couldn't take feeling like boy is there and couldn't help him. Couldn't take the negative energy adding to everything. Never been back. A month later, I was in the hospital throwing up, sick as a dog, and there was a clump of black hair. Hi, I don't eat hair, and even so, I am blonde. I need some kind of peace. I know it's easy to pin it all on drug use, which I have stopped 6 months clean, but now sitting here sober, I still feel the sickness swell up when I think about. This is very real to me, and although the easy option would be to blame it all on that, I can't. Know also that the black hair in my vomit was real. The nurse saw it and thought I was nuts. And that I have used drugs in the past, some trippy, some speedy, so I have things to compare this to. Nothing I have ever been through. Not even on DMT. Please just have an open mind. Asterisk, I've cleaned up my act, no longer work there, or ever would again. Don't do drugs anymore, but today the thoughts send me into kind of frenzy. My head hurts so bad, and I've been getting very, very bad cramps and stomach on and off for a day. Fifth story. The night I realized demons live among us. You never expect scary stories to ever be true until it happens to you. It was the end of June 2018. So, as of right now, about 3 months ago, it has taken me 3 months to write about this. My best friend, we'll call her Jess, came home for break from her university, and she brought her roommate with her since she had never been to California. Let's call her roommate Key. Now myself and Jess have been into scary things ever since we met freshman year in high school. We were particularly interested in this castle called Preston Castle that was located in a neighboring city. Preston Castle is a reform school for boys. It hasn't been in use since 1960 because the castle is supposedly haunted. It has been said that one of the boys killed their housekeeper, Anna Corbin. It's a real thing, look it up. And now Anna and a few of the boys haunt the castle. Even the TV show Ghost Hunters did an episode on the creepy castle. Now I've been interested in this castle since I developed a love for scary things. In fact, I was so interested in this castle that I've convinced my criminology class in high school to take a tour there. It's not unusual for tours to take place there, because every October the castle will put on a haunted house where they'll decorate it and hide and jump out at you. It's actually scary. I've taken the tour 3 times myself and plan to go again this month. They even have overnight stay tours for a price. Anyway, the point is that I've been to this castle a lot, whether it was legally or illegally. First things first, the castle sits on a hill and overlooks a ghost town. It's a small neighborhood where the maids and prison guards would stay. I walked through this neighborhood before, and it definitely has creepy vibes. Windows have been smashed, doors have been boarded up and spray painted uninhabitable. Now this ghost town is really important, so keep it in mind. Flashback to Jess, Key, and I sitting in Jess's living room. It's about 2 a.m. We're telling Key scary stories when Jess and I get this crazy good idea to take her to Preston Castle. It's only an hour drive, so why not? We pack flashlights and head out to the town of Ione. We hop into my car. I'm driving. Key is sitting in the passenger seat, and Jess is sitting behind me. As we pull up to the castle, I immediately get a sick feeling in my stomach. Mind you, I've been on tours, and I've come to the castle countless number of times, but I've never felt this bad about it. The original plan was to get out of the car and walk around. As I drove up that driveway, I just kept getting sicker and sicker, but Mama didn't raise Nobi asterisk, 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 so if the girls are going to get out, then so was I. As I get to the top of the driveway, I hear Jess say, "Hey guys, I really don't want to get out," which made me very relieved. So we decided to just sit in the car and shine our flashlights out the window. After Key had seen enough, I turn around and start driving back down toward the ghost town. We notice a cat crossing the street, so I stop to let it pass. Real quick, when you drive away from the castle and back down the driveway, the ghost town is to the left of you. The way the cat crossed the street had our heads turned in the direction of the ghost town. Okay, back to the story. So being the girls, we were shining our flashlights on this cat, and we're oohing and eyeing, but then something down the road about 15 yards behind the cat catches my eye. It's crossing the street. At this point, didn't know if my mind was playing tricks on me or what, so I kept my flashlight on the cat, but I didn't take my eyes away from this thing I was looking at. Now what I saw still gives me the creeps to this day. At first I thought it was an animal, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw that it was a human. It looked like a shadow, but I could see its rib cage, and it had abnormally long arms and legs. The way it was walking still brings tears to my eyes. It was hunched over in a plank and walked on all fours. But the way it moved was like an army crawl, but about 1.5 feet off the ground. It moved extremely slow and took its time with every step. I watched it for about a minute, and it really only took 2 slow steps. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I remember being mesmerized, and I had tunnel vision, and Jess and Key started to sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. And then reality hit. I heard Jess as clear as day say, "Wait a second," and I watched, terrified, as her flashlight moved from the cat over to the creature I was looking at. I heard Jess scream, and then I started to scream. Because it finally hit me that what I was seeing wasn't in my head. Jess saw it too. This thing turned its head to look at us. And I wish I had something more scary to say, but the truth is, as soon as it looked at me, I drove off. I didn't even stop at the stop sign in fear that this thing could actually be fast and was chasing us. I drove until I hit a well-lit gas station, and I stopped there to catch my breath. Unfortunately, that's where this story ends. I had my theory of what it was. It could have been a naked man on drugs, but that doesn't explain the abnormally long limbs. It wasn't until I was talking to a family relative, and what she said to me scared me to death. She said, "You know, when demons inhabit a body, it's like a newborn baby. It doesn't know how to walk, and it can't fit into the body until it becomes comfortable in its newfound skin." That could explain why it was crawling so strangely and why it had longer limbs. You can believe this story or not, but I swear to you that I am not lying about that night. I truly believe that what I saw that night was demonic, and it scares me even more knowing that I'll be going back there for their Halloween tour. I could try to keep you guys updated. Maybe I'll even record a video of where everything happened and show you how creepy the castle really is. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.